I'd like everyone, if possible, just to say a few words, introduce themselves and say a few words. And as tradition goes, let's start with the oldest.
It's me, 74. 54,
Yeah,
54, yes. I'm 74 years old. I'm a professor in Polytechnical University of Bucharest. I'm basically an electronics engineer and I'm qualified in quality management and information science. So I was involved in consumer electronics like an engineer in a company which is producing a lot of electronics appliances and electronic measuring instruments. So your topic seems to be very interesting for me. Thank you very much for inviting me.
who's next? Who feels older?
Well, others are younger.
I feel the youngest, so I'm gonna be the last one. So how about Krsto then?
My name is Krsto. I'm a business development manager in RTRK company. My background is consumer electronics and mainly the software for TVs. I also have some insights in the automotive industry and mainly in the infotainment domain. I've been active in this consumer electronic industry for 10 years now.
Thank you. Kyle, would you tell us a bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm Kyle. I started iFixit. We are the free open source repair guide to everything. Our goal is to teach everyone in the world how to fix their things. And I'm also a ringleader of the right to repair movement. Folks trying in Europe, Canada, Australia, and here in the United States to get legislation passed to level the playing field and stop monopolistic behavior in the repair market. So very excited to be here.
Thank you, Kyle, as well. So, and me at last, I'm Petar. I'm a professor here at the University of Novi Sad. I'm an avid open source supporter. I'm a strong proponent of open technology, open standards, and using the web as an API. And I'm very interested in this, both as a consumer and as a developer on the topic. And I'll be your moderator today. So honestly, I really wanted to keep this open-ended because given your all different backgrounds, I believe it's going to evolve in a very interesting discussion. But I do want to seed this discussion. And I'm going to let you decide who wants to go first on this one, which is really, let's talk about companies. Let's talk about the business. Let's open the floor with a question. Why is planned obsolescence good for the companies? Let's start with the controversy. And who wants to go first? Why do you think it's good for the companies and good for the economy? Planned obsolescence. Not if it's bad, just the good things. How it would be good.
Peter, are you so kind to define before all the meaning of this concept, obsolescence?
Right. So the planned obsolescence, we can think of it in different ways. I think Kyle would do a lot better job than me here. But planned obsolescence, in my opinion, and the general consensus, if you can, because there's so much controversy around it, is a strategy. It's not accidental. It's intended business strategy to introduce different things that are going to prevent you from using or repairing or keeping your product at bay. So, for instance, if you want to give it to someone else, you won't be able to. If you want to keep upgrading, you won't be able to. If you want to repair it yourself, you won't be able to. If you want to replace something, what is like, for instance, a battery, you won't be able to, or it will fail in different ways. Or even if everything continues working, the company will find ways to make some fun with you with using software, or either by not releasing new updates and exposing you security vulnerabilities, or even removing some of your features, or outright stopping support for your equipment.
I think that there are some good side effects of the strategy. I'm not sure if it is intended by the strategy geniuses that created that, but I think it kind of creates a pacemaker for the technology development, and gives some pressure, provides some pressure for the technology to evolve, because they cannot put you in this position without offering you an alternative that is more advanced, better, in offering you more features, and offering you the latest the trends that are available. So I think it kind of creates this environment in which technology needs to evolve much faster in order to show differentiation with every new product and with every new version. And of course, this obsolescence maybe helps to emphasize on that differentiation, but we cannot deny that the differentiation exists and that evolution also exists. And I think that wouldn't be the case if we would hold on to our same devices that we had 20 years ago. I believe that wouldn't be possible. A lot of new technologies that come, for example, from my field, from video, like new codecs, new better resolutions and better experiences that come with new technologies and new researches where a lot of money is invested. They evolve every year, and actually they cannot be supported with usually they cannot be supported with the same old hardware that is there for I don't know how many years. So I think that's from my side if trying to make some good out of it. That's what I see.
And seeding the discussion, you're doing a wonderful job. Already know what the other questions will be moving forward. Let's keep it in terms of a relaxed atmosphere, if you don't mind. So we'll keep it on a first name basis. And because Krsto is first on my screen, next I'd like to hear if Nicolae has any thoughts on this, on what is the good outcome of forcing you to upgrade or forcing to buy new tech, or forbidding you from fixing the existing tech.
The best outcome is to increase sales and the profit of companies. But
what about the consumer?
From consumer point of view, is bad, because the consumers are used to buy some products which are long living, which have dozens of years of lifetime. So we are very concerned in the Faculty of Electronics and the companies in Romania by reliability studies, in order to get products which are very reliable, which are not in failure during the tens of years. Now is not more interesting for this. Repairing shops do not more exist. Nobody is able to repair IT item because there is no component, no procedure, no other method. So if a device is failed, you have to replace it. To replace it, it means cost of replacing, which have to be very, very high sometimes. So all this are against the consumer interest. I am the founder of Consumer Protection Laws in Romania. I am the founder of the Consumer Protection Authority in Romania. So I know very well what it is about. So, since 30 years, I am involved in consumer matters, consumer rights. So one of the rights is to know better, to have information about the products to be bought on the market. And sometimes our distributors and producers and providers are not delivering enough information about the new products. In addition, we have a saying, not every new product is a progress. Sometimes we have new products which are not better, like former ones. So what to do in order to satisfy the consumer rights? This is a problem, I can give you two examples. For example, we have a new standard of ISO. It's about 50, 160, about the characteristics of electrical energy delivered to low voltage consumers. And according to these new standards, the nominal value should be 230 plus minus 20%. Till this standard, we have 220 volts nominal voltage, plus and minus 10%. Now, with the new standards, we have networks and houses and companies which are receiving from the distributor of electrical energy voltages till 253 volts, which is 11 volts more as their appliances, their installations, the equipment are allowing. This is a very big danger for fire. We have thousands of houses which were on fire because this station, this voltage increased with 11 volts, and it's legal. It's legal to provide consumers with 11 volts more. This is the first idea. The second idea is related to the reliability indicators. Before 20 years ago, we had a lot of indicators of reliability. Medium time before failure, MTBF, or intensity of failure. Now, these indicators are confidential, or they are not more produced, shown by the distributors and the providers. Why? Because this is not their interest. For example, we have television sets manufactured in Romania in the year 70, 80, which had a medium time before failure, MTBF, 10,000 hours, 10,000 hours. After replacing the vacuum tubes with transistors and with integrate circuits, we increased this medium time between failures till 30,000, 40,000 hours. So good progress. But now it's not about this because changes are very fast in the field of electrical, of integrated circuits. So nobody is interested in this indicator because they have to change the failed equipment, buying another one. So cost of investment are increasing, cost of maintenance are increasing, but maybe the satisfaction of consumer is better. I think so. Sometimes.
Thank you, Nicolae. Oh, sorry. There are still more questions. It's already opening up. I'm really excited about this. So, Kyle, I know. Instead, let's do a ping pong. Let's be fair, because this is perhaps the weirdest or the hardest question for you. Let me immediately after that follow up with the question. Yes, we want to force the new tech. Let me hear about the benefits that companies literally force you that you need to get new tech. But the second question immediately after that, where I think you could open up really, is, but at what costs?
Do you know the benefits of adopting the new standards for low voltage for 50,160, ISO 50,160? It's because the voltage is increasing, the currents are lower, so the investment costs in copper, in cables are lower. So their investment costs in distribution electrical cables are lowering. This is maybe a benefit for the producer of cables, of electrical cables. Nevertheless,
but it's only one specific part of the industry, yes. It's not, the consumer can't really benefit from it.
No, for consumer it's not a benefit, only for companies. So a standard has to satisfy all the participants to the trade, consumer and producer, providers, distributors. So all have to be satisfied. Or in Romania, consumers were not taken into consideration because they are not representative in the standardization bodies in order to adopt the best standard. We have to adopt the standard given by European Community. Or standard
yes,
given
that's one.
Are not compulsory, are voluntary. All are voluntary. They can become compulsory if the national authority is deciding this, or by decision of the government, but not by the body of standardization. This was a failure in Romania. We didn't know this detail. It's very important detail. So the standard 50,160 has to be translated in Romanian as a voluntary standard. It was translated as a voluntary standard, but it was distributed as a compulsory standard for companies distributing and providing.
We will touch on the legislative problem issues with forcing a standard on something, but Honestly, I would really love to hear Kyle as well, especially to give us a bit of, if he can and if he wants to give us a pros about forcing new tech upon us. And then immediately afterwards, the costs of it.
Yeah, I mean, progress is necessary. We don't want to get in the way of progress. And the term planned obsolescence is a little bit hard for me. I like to think about maybe psychological obsolescence. Apple for years with the iPods, and they do this with the iPhones. Every year it's a slightly different shape. What's the difference between an iPhone 12 and an iPhone 11? Like, I honestly couldn't tell you. Are you going to see any functional difference? Maybe not. That doesn't mean that we can't have technology progress and we can't have new codecs come out. So I think there's different aspects of this. You have technological obsolescence. The new thing is better. Electric cars are better than internal combustion cars. Okay, sure, we get that. But it doesn't mean that the internal combustion vehicle is going to stop working. And I think that's where when we see where I think people really get frustrated with planned obsolescence is when the thing that I bought no longer works for the thing that I bought it for. And Sonos did this with their speakers. They have smart speakers, and they have a new wireless protocol, and they don't want the new speakers to talk to the old speakers anymore. So that's really frustrating to people. So what I would say is, like, the overall intent as an engineer, if I make a thing, I want that thing to last as long as possible. I want it to stand the test of time. If I buy a washing machine and there's a new video protocol, I don't want my washing machine to go obsolete because there's a new video protocol, right? Or I don't want, Wi-Fi 6 comes out, my washing machine should not stop working. And that seems like a preposterous example, but we're seeing this over and over in the technology world, that when you add sort of bleeding edge technology to every physical thing in our life, that takes the sort of like the rapid treadmill of technological innovation that maybe we want with smartphones. We don't want that on our washing machines.
But I think that those things are very good examples of how idiotic this can go and how far it can go. But some examples of technological advancements are also obvious. For example, everybody's talking these days about 5G, and if you want access to it, you need to have new hardware. There's simply no way to access it with the old one. And there are, as I mentioned, the codecs. Yes, they don't apply to the washing machine, but they do apply to a TV and a set-top box. It's the main feature, and with every year, the new developments come, and new content is being recorded in the new technologies, using the new technologies, and if you want access to it, you need to upgrade your hardware. It's simply not.
Let me just check. You're talking about the DRM issues. You're not talking about the encoding issues, right?
I'm talking about the decoding and encoding issues as well. Of course, it's not that every year your hardware becomes obsolete for the new codecs, but in a couple of years it actually does. So it needs hardware support for that.
I would say so on the 5G example. Fine, 5G comes out, you need new hardware to take advantage of it. Great, new functionality, new technology, cool, no problem. The problem that I have is when they shut off the 3G networks so that they can use that bandwidth for 5G, and then you have billions of smartphones that are out there that only talk on 3G are no longer functional. That's really problematic. And this doesn't just happen with cellular technology. This happens with APIs and software as well. Last year, I decided to switch to an iPhone 4S for a while. And the iPhone, it worked perfectly fine. I had a new battery in it. I had iOS 6. It worked fine. I had the older versions of various apps. What I found was that the 5-year-old version of, say, the Uber app didn't work anymore because Uber had changed their login API, and the old app just couldn't talk, right? And I couldn't install the new app because it wouldn't work on the only version of the operating system that would run on that phone. So this is where you run into technological obsolescence becoming a challenge. And we really need to be thinking about this from a longer term perspective. If you're going to make a product, let's think about supporting that for 20 plus years.
So immediately right now, I'm going to ask Nicolae, is new tech always better? Is it always progress?
Yes, it's a progress. If new functions, new operations, new facilities are created, it's very, very good. It's a progress. But if these new functions are not needed by the consumers, are not in their interest to use this device, they are not very useful. But we have to pay. As for example, I'm using Windows 10. Since I put Windows 10 to my computer, I had to change all the hardware in order to be compatible. I had other operation systems on my computers, but only one, just now, I have Windows 10. This is a very, very interesting solution in order to operate the entire device. But updating are sometimes very, very often. Updates are including appliances and facilities I don't need. And sometimes they are not compatible with other software I installed on my computer. So what to do? I learned, I took a lot of time in order to do this. And now I found some solutions. What I have to say is time needed to learn the new solution for the consumer. The consumer needs to learn what is new, how to use it, and it's taking time. For old people like me, it's not very important, very easy to do this.
So it's just being new for the sake of it being new.
Days and days in order to learn what is new and how it works is not a very good idea.
Thank you. So I'm going to add to that, if you don't mind, one thing. Let's talk about washing machines. So they're a really bad example of planned obsolescence. I'm hoping, at least in the EU, that the situation will change where you intentionally either use plastic drums, so they'll last a lot less, or, for example, to use parts that you can't really get to and fix them easily because they're literally molded into the plastic. So you can disassemble, but then you can't effectively reassemble because it was intentionally done so that it's either really hard to do or it's undoable. But immediately right now for Krsto, I have a new question. So you have a very interesting viewpoint because of the not only consumer electronics but media consumption, and because of the licensing issues, because of the new and better ways to hack the DRM and new and worse DRMs. And sorry, I'm being opinionated a bit about that, but or more intrusive DRMs. But if we're already forced for some equipment to buy new things, so because you're going to be obsolete, why not just rent it to us then? What are the pros and cons of it?
Yeah, so that's what operators are actually doing. So they are renting set-top boxes to you in most cases all over the world. So you don't actually go into a store and buy your own device. You actually rent it. It's included in your subscription. As soon as you stop paying for subscription, they take your device back. They take care of the life cycle of that device. Actually, their interest is to have it as long as possible because they need to pay for the development of the new device. But at the same time, they are battling this, battling to and fighting to stay on top of things when it comes to the latest contents, to the latest features, and what you mentioned as well is the security part. Because for the security, the root of trust is always somewhere in the hardware, and as soon as it is broken, the hardware becomes obsolete. So those things are also coming more important and pushing for this obsolescence.
Okay, you're just opening my next question to you immediately right now. What happens when the root of trust breaks and you start removing the features because you don't want to upgrade the product as you should probably? You just want to do a quick fix, and you're just going to drop an advertised feature from your system by forcing a mandatory update. So one thing that comes to mind is PlayStation 3, Sony's PlayStation 3 and Linux. When it came out, it had Linux. Afterwards, it was removed because it was a path for some hackers to exploit the system. So they just outright removed the feature that which they sold us to the consumer and advertised as a feature that you're able to run Linux. Yes. What are your thoughts on that strategy? Especially Sony is known by those strategies. So,
I mean, it's a good one to try to salvage the device. They actually spend a lot more money into development of such devices much more
Yeah,
than
but they're
it
not
is.
renting the device. They sold you the device, so
Yeah.
you own the device.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. I think, again, if we would expect those devices to have a lifetime of 20 years, they would be much more expensive, and probably majority of us wouldn't be able to buy them in the first place, because if they would calculate in the maintenance cost of software and to make it fresh all the time during the 20 years.
You don't need to make it fresh all the time. We already saw that, especially in the I won't say consumer electronics, but I would say media string, that still most of the companies are renting you very old equipment. When I say very old, I mean like tech from 15 years ago, because they don't really want to upgrade the infrastructure. But yeah, I can understand what you're saying. Kyle, what are your thoughts on this? And then Nicolae immediately afterwards.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of aspects of this. One is, if you're taking a feature away from a product after you sold that to people, you're in serious legal jeopardy. Like, I would love to send some lawyers after someone who does that, and I'd be curious. Yeah, the Sony thing happened a little while ago. I'd be curious if there were any suits that came out of that. Fundamentally, we need the freedom to run what we want on our devices. Any product that we buy that has an operating system, you should be able to remove that operating system and run the software of your choice. We just ran a post about Samsung has announced their Galaxy upcycling program. And a few years ago, we were approached by a group of Samsung engineers who were working on this originally, and the plan was to be able to basically unlock the bootloaders of Samsung's flagship phones, that you could run any operating system you want. And I saw a Samsung S5 running Ubuntu. It was really cool. You could run Docker, and then you can imagine you take your old phone and use it as use it to control your fish tank, or use it as a door cam or a thermostat. You could use it as a smart home controller. It was a really neat idea. And unfortunately, Samsung killed the project and then rebranded it and launched it as something else that's not actually useful.
And why do you think? Sorry to interrupt. Why do you think they canceled it?
Yeah, they can't. As far as I can tell, they canceled it because Samsung's internal culture had a really hard time spending resources on a product that couldn't be sold. They're like, "Hey, this Galaxy upcycling program is great. How's it going to make us money?" And the answer is, it's going to make them money indirectly by raising the value of their used devices in the marketplace. A Samsung S8 is worth less right now than an iPhone 8. Even if they sold for the same amount originally, they're worth less because the reuse ability of that phone is dramatically lower than the iPhones, and there's repairability. There's a lot of reasons for that.
Thank you, Kyle. Sorry, if you do you want to say something, Krsto, about this?
My final thought.
Oh, sorry. I missed who's talking because smaller screen. Sorry.
This is the kind of strategy. This is what we want to see. We need to liberate the software on devices. Part of the way that we get around the technological obsolescence is you turn to more efficient operating systems, right? Linux is.
We will open the question to software patents. Don't worry about that. That's the reason why I'm speeding up this a bit. Nicolae, the same question, and especially consumer law applied when looking at consumer law. You get a device and they intentionally remove a feature from you. I'm going to give you one more example. I wanted to buy a multi-AC system, so one outer unit, multiple inner units, and thank God I looked at Google Play reviews, because the company still advertises it's a smart device, so you can use it like I do with my Roborox and everything other smart devices in my home. I can it's into the things the enabled device, so I can use it across the internet. So I can be in another city. I want my AC to optimize the temperature because I have a small baby when I come back, so everything is chill. I haven't been out for 7 days and everything. Recently, the company, which shall be unnamed here, about a few months ago, disabled this feature. Oh, well, no, not disabled. They enabled the feature to be only used if you're in close proximity of the device. So if you're out of home, you can't use remote access. You can only use it when you're within the home. And the whole point of buying this expensive system is to be able to manage it remotely. And they're still advertising that you're able to manage it remotely. Only the thing that they're not telling you is that you're limited to within your home. So how do you feel about that, Nicolae? What are your thoughts on it?
Thank you,
Is
Petar.
this fair business practice?
Thank you, Petar. I would like, before all, to tell you what I found about your former question about the positive outcome for companies. I identified the two of this, because in Romania, one of the most respected rights of consumer is the right of compensation. Consumer of electricity, which had filed their equipment, electronics or electrical equipment, thanks to the non-quality or the interruption of electricity, have to be compensated. But our provider and distributor of electricity are refusing to recognize the failure in the houses of consumers. Why? Because they are not able technically to find them. All what they are doing is to measure the resistance toward earth of the network. This is very few, very few. Now in Western companies in Western Europe, now in Romania too, there are quality analyzers of electrical energy provided to houses and companies. So this quality analyzers are registers of variation of electrical energy on 3 phases during some months. And they are discovering the peak values of the voltages provided to the customers. If they are able to record this on a sheet of paper, this is a proof in justice. And the consumer has the right to ask for compensation in justice. But the problem is our justice is very, very slow. It's expensive, and sometimes decisions are not legal. So we decided and we discovered, with the help of consumer of the European Union, the so-called collective trials. Collective trials could be a solution. Nevertheless, a good positive outcome for companies is that consumer of electrical energy in Romania discovered the new appliances, the new equipment, the new protection equipment. As for example, we have uninterruptible power supply. A lot of people are powering their devices only by this UPS. We have stabilizers of electrical of alternative currents, voltages. We have regulators of alternative. All these are now sold more as before in order to compensate the non-quality of electrical energy.
And who's paying for this? In the end, who's paying for this?
Yes, they have to pay. They have to pay. This is a supplementary investment cost. Right. But the solution is not there. I was in contact with the Association of Electrical Experts of Central Europe, and they told me the solution via the Italian owners of our producer of electrical energy in Romania, Enel. So the solution is very simple: to reduce the maximal value of allowed interval of voltages, not 230, 10% minus plus 10%, but minus 10% and plus 5%. 5% will mean the maximal value is 243 volts. The former one was 242 volts, so it's very close. And doing this, it could be a solution. But our authorities are refusing now because they do not like to copy the other countries. They have to discover themselves what will happen when more consumer will start trials in justice in order to obtain compensation. It's
an obvious safety risk, like with the batteries. Sorry? Because it can create bodily harm. It can create, it can lead even to death in certain situations. But yeah, I really want to hear, and
I have a question. What is the situation in Serbia? Because what I told you, it was in Poland, in Hungary, in Slovak Republic, and in Czech Republic. I don't know.
3 of my computers have died due to different modes of power failures. And since then, I have UPS, or either I have a laptop, and I always have a few spare extension cords, not extension cords, but the adapters for the laptops. But this was while I was in a smaller city and where the network was not really as well maintained. Thankfully, I'm in a bigger city now, and I don't really care about that. It's a way smaller issue than it was before. But yes, unfortunately, the more remote you are, the older the equipment, the worse it gets. Let's be honest.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, started on the legislative procedures if you're able to recover any damages, because the burden of proof is upon you. So it's really complicated. But let's continue this. Maybe even, and I'm gonna let you guys decide who's gonna talk about this first. Question is really, how do you feel about devices that perhaps deliberately fail just either at the end of their warranty or just after their warranty? So they were perhaps they're deliberately programmed to fail afterwards. And should companies be held accountable for this, in business-wise, money-wise, reputation-wise, legally, for the e-waste that's the result of this practice?
Well, France has banned this practice. So France has made planned obsolescence illegal. The question is, how do you enforce that? And the first case happening in that enforcement is around Apple slowing down phones with older batteries. And that case is in the hands of French enforcement. They're looking into it right now. Italy has fined Apple over this exact situation. And if you'll recall, these were batteries that were older, they were chemically degraded. And so Apple, without telling people, slowed down the phone to make it so the batteries wouldn't shut off. They degraded the processor, but by not telling people, it was pretty fraudulent. In general, it's very hard to prove that there's, these evil, designers in the smoke-filled room designing the product to fail after 13 months in. Very hard to prove that. There's been some cases around HP with printer, counting cycles and that kind of thing. But I don't think that that's the bulk of what's happening. I think instead you get like what's happening with the washing machines is not planned obsolescence, designing it to work after 13 months. It's cost reduction. They're trying to make the cheapest dang washing machine they possibly can. And as long as they make it to where it doesn't fail within the 12 months, they're happy. So that's what we really have to deal with is how do we reward quality products and name and shame everybody else?
I mean, you definitely do have quality products. You have better quality washing machines, but they are substantially more expensive. So that is not. I mean, it's not an obvious choice actually. So that's a problem. So some of us will have to go for the cheaper solutions, and then we'll have to be forced to replace them once they get broken. But I mean, what's actually? Sorry to answer with the question to your question, but what's the problem?
Please do.
What's the problem if the device breaks after the warranty? I mean, isn't everything fine there? I don't see.
So imagine that you bought a car that costs you 60,000 euros or pounds or US dollars, and it breaks immediately after 2 years. And it's unfixable. The price of fixing the issue, let's say it's the transmission or it's the motor. Let's use the transmission. Given the current today's variable transmissions and automatic transitions, let's use the transmission. Will you be able to fix the car after 2 years?
I mean, probably would, because if I wouldn't, that would be extremely damaging to the brand and to the. I mean, they would be doing themselves not a favor, but more damage than good. So it's not in their interest really to damage the face of the brand and to do that in that way deliberately. So if they respect the warranty. If you're not satisfied with the 2-year warranty, go with a brand which has a longer warranty. It's probably going to be more expensive. So I think there is still choice. But if we want to enforce quality and if we want to enforce longevity of those products, maintainability and being maintainable for 20 years, that's going to cost us much more than it does to replace it with a new device.
Thank you, Krsto. This is really interesting. From my own personal experience, price, quality, maintainability, and longevity, unfortunately, are not always in correlation. And from personal experience in the last year, I was looking for a car. I had a really open budget, but Nicolae, we're probably happy with this. But in the end, I went with Dacia because it was a basic, really reliable, really well-built car with the Duster, and I'm really happy with it, given the alternatives that I was thinking about. But the reason why I'm saying this is because I really want to hear Nicolae. What can the consumer do about all of this? So literally 2 days after the warranty expired, your engine broke, and the quote from for instance, from a dealership is 5,000 euros to replace the engine. Would you do it?
Okay, thank you, Peter, for what you have told us about Dacia, our national car during 30 years. Dacia was a competitive car through its price, only through its price, not for technical performances, because Renault...
Previous generation, yeah.
Yes, but French people which are now producing Dacia told us we have to maintain this lower price in order to sell more. They are right, okay. But the problem for me is another one now, and I intend to answer to your question, Peter. It's about the approach of quality. What does it mean, a quality product for you? A product which is conform to its specification, or a product which is conform to the requirements of the customer? We have a good time to reflect to this one, because the choice is not easy. A lot of Romanian producers are thinking only conformity with specification, and they are not thinking to the expectation, to the requirements of the customer. So we are not very involved in this evaluation of customer satisfaction. I don't know in Serbian, but Professor Vidosav Majstorovic, which learned me what Serbian did for quality matters, told me good evaluation of quality and of conformity with the technical specification could be the first approach of the quality to you. I think the definition quality means customer satisfaction has to be taken into consideration. For us in Romania, the warranty time is sometimes prolonged 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in order to take more money from the customer. But if a problem appears, even with this warranty certificate, they are not able to find the failure and even to replace, because the spare parts is very expensive, and it doesn't matter. It's preferable to buy another one, new. It happened to me for printers. Printers after 2-3 years are kaput. You have to buy other, because they have not low prices for the printing spare parts. Okay, so we are not very used here to maintain, to accept warranty times. After the warranty time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, some people are using the appliances 10 years, 15 years, because the new models are not very interesting for them. Why? Because the learning time is very important. For new models, consumers have to use learning time. They do not have no information, no time, nor interest to do this. So they are using the old model in order to keep it going.
So sometimes new leads to worse user experience.
Yes, it's very important to take into consideration user experience. I am now organizing meetings with the consumers in order to ask for them requirements, for their needs. It's very, very important. In quality management, it's a difference between needs and waitings. There are needs present or future. In the requirements are needs and waitings put into written. Into written, it's safe. But if you are expressing only verbally these needs and the waitings, those are not maybe taken into consideration. This is the issue. So another way to find this non-quality is to have a mystery shopper. We developed in Romania a very interesting and useful and efficient approach of mystery shopper, because this mystery shopper are employed by the managers in order to find the non-quality of their sellers and employees. And sometimes the results are extraordinary. We cannot find other results using the old method. Maybe you know, in Romania, like in other former socialist countries, we had compulsory national standards and have even a quality police, which punished people who did not produce quality in the name of socialist order. So cannot be more existing. We have taken the model of gold standard in Soviet Union, and I was told all other socialist countries took this model. I don't know in Serbia. So did you punish ever the people who did not produce quality?
I have heard about this from my father. So yeah, sometimes it did happen, especially in more sensitive industries.
It's better to forget.
Yeah, the punishments were quite rigorous. Okay, let's drop a bombshell now. Should we have the right to repair our stuff ourselves? Why and why not?
Would you be so kind to repeat, please?
Should we have the right to repair our technology, our stuff, the stuff that we bought, not rented, ourselves, by ourselves, not to hire someone, but I want to be able to repair my equipment? Should I be allowed to do this? Why and why not? Pros and cons.
If you are able,
who wants to go first?
Why not? If you are able to do this, the matter which is important is the knowledge, the skills which are allowing you to do this, not the law. The law cannot forbid me to repair myself. How could be this possible?
I think that Kyle would be have a very interesting view on that, on the legislative issues with that.
Yes, right.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a mechanical product, we fundamentally do have the ability to fix things ourselves, right? If I have if I own this and I break it and I want to glue it back together, I can do that, right? When it comes to the world of electronics and software, all of a sudden it's different. There are laws that potentially get in the way, right? If I have a copy of Microsoft Office and I want to remove a feature from it and then resell my copy of Microsoft Office, that's not necessarily legal to do. And that's a freedom that we have given up in the world of copyright. But now the world of physical things like this and the world of software are merging and colliding in unexpected ways. And that's why you see demand for right to repair regulations. The European
But what happens if I have a phone that has a battery that's non-user serviceable? It's declared as user serviceable item, but it has limited life. For instance, in Serbia, this phone would have 2 years of warranty. However, its battery would only have 6 months of warranty because it is deemed as a perishable part. Let's go it like that. I don't know the exact term in English. But I'm not allowed to replace it, and I'm not allowed to have another copy of it. It's protected. If nothing else, what happens if my producer uses special screws which they have patented? So I'm not even allowed to make my own tooling.
Yeah, that could happen. And I don't think it should. I think this is where society needs to step in and say that's not allowed. If you had a car manufacturer gluing tires to the car and saying you can't replace the tires on the car, just buy a new car, we wouldn't put up with that, and we shouldn't put up with it with electronics.
Krsto?
I think that those companies with the special screws that you mentioned, they are not forbidding you, I believe, and they're just making it more difficult for you as an individual to do the repair. But still, I believe the patent is not protecting you as an individual to develop your tooling if you are really keen on fixing that and to fix it. What they are protecting is doing it at scale, which is not in their interest, to do it easily on scale. So that I believe that they're hindering only that part. They're not really disabling you completely from being able to repair certain things. Another thing is, if they would be very liberal towards those things, they are maybe even protecting themselves by that, because you can then hinder with the device and make claims towards the warranty which are false, and they want to reduce the efforts that they need to make in order to check if the warranty is valid or not. By disabling you to get into the device, they kind of protect themselves from those scenarios as well. So
but they sold the device. I'm not saying anything if you rented the device, but if you sold the device, who owns it? And why am I not allowed to do whatever I want with it?
Yes, but you can attempt to repair a broken device and make even more damage than there was.
And it's my problem.
Okay, if you accept that you void the warranty by doing that, then you should be allowed to do that, of course.
Should replacing the battery in a phone be voidable? Should it be voiding your warranty? Immediately, the same question for everyone.
Yeah, so the answer to that question is different in every country. So since I'm in America, I'll answer that, and I'll say it's not legal in America for them to void your warranty if you replace the battery. It's flat out illegal for them to do that. And the U.S. Federal Trade Commission has asked consumers to report instances of manufacturing that as illegal fraud.
In Serbia, if I were to buy a laptop in Serbia, which is one reason why I didn't buy it here, and if I were to open the laptop just to clean it, technically, if they saw that I opened it and I was not allowed to by the manual that was within the box, not the outside the box, it was not mentioned within the box, or if I want to replace a battery that's embedded in the laptop, unfortunately, that's a common practice these days, I would literally void my warranty because I would break an internal sticker within it. Speaking from experience, unfortunately.
Work on changing that law.
Peter, I have a remark here. What you told us, examples are good examples of protective standards, or according to their initial goal, standards have to facilitate the world trade, not to protect the company. I have a lot of such examples here in Romania, as for example, for electrical cars, connectors to electrical network are different. Power supply,
yes.
And a lot, many examples of standards which are protected.
So why don't we have USB for cars?
We are in a way to analyze the strengths and the weaknesses of the electrical cars in Romania. I send you the results of our analysis. There are a lot of weaknesses, and you have not to believe the publicity, which can be troubling. A lot of publicity was made here for electrical cars, but in reality, Romanian experts in electrical matters, electronic matters, discovered these electrical cars are not so advantageous in respect to other one because of the battery, because of the problems of power supply, of connectors, even the kilowatt provided to the car is much cheaper in your home as in the station for recharging the station. So why all these are protected? So the legislation has to avoid such approaches. It's my opinion.
The only question is who is it protecting? Is it protecting the consumer or the company itself?
Only the company, not the consumer. Only the companies. Companies are able to increase their sales and their profits. This is normal. But the state has to do something in order to protect the consumer right. There are 8 consumer rights. I can't tell you all this, but the problem is how efficient is the state in order to do this. I don't know in Serbia, but in Romania they are not very efficient. I am their father and very uncontent about their manner of work, because
we try, but we're still growing.
We have a lot of legislation which was imposed by the European Union, and our consumer needs, expectations are not always taken into consideration. Our authority for consumer protection is receiving every day about 500 petitions. Why? Because customer satisfaction is very low. We have a lot of problems with these companies, and the state is weak in order to do something for protect these rights. And in my opinion, and as an engineer, as electronics engineer for 40 years, the problem is if you have the ability to discover these facts about broking warranty contract or liability law imposed by the company. If nobody is able to do this, you can do this without fear. I think
Okay. We're running out of time, and I have loads of new questions that you opened up to me, but I'm just going to stick to one, and we're going to somewhat of a lightning round. So let's try to keep it at a minute per person. So the question here is, given the current cloud native methodology, always online, Internet of Things, it's changing the consumer market. But I'm one scenario. I'm currently able to, if I want to play a physical media from 100 years ago. But given the today's cloud native technologies, Internet of Things, always online, or the DRMs, will I be able to do the same thing in 20 years with today's media?
No.
Krsto?
I think so. I think the same. Probably will depend on what media. The time filters quality as well, and some of it will probably stay and be re-encoded with the new technologies and will be kept, but some of it will be
If we
lost
stick to that, you need to understand that Van Gogh, we would never know about him because no one liked him while he was alive. Only after he died, several years have passed and people start appreciating him. So that's a dangerous path to tread, But again, I'm going to ask, is this good or not? But Nicolae, what are your thoughts? Should I be allowed in 20 or 50 years to play today's media?
Say it again, please. I was in a way to write.
Should I be allowed in 20 or 50 years to play today's media? I buy a copyrighted, protected physical device. Let's use physical. I bought a game, or I bought an CD, or I bought a DVD. No, let's stick with DVD. I bought a DVD or a Blu-ray. Should I be able to play it in 50 years?
So very interesting question. Thank you. I think it's not a first question of copyright. It's a question of technical means to reproduce former support of information.
But if you have a DRM that's preventing you, and yes, the company that owns DRM went belly up.
I have all the Patephone discs, which are now played only on the older model of Patephones, and we are able to hear these records.
But if the device was always online.
If all would be online, what will happen? No interest, because online you have better condition, bandwidth and.
No, sorry. I meant if the device requires active internet connection for you to be able to cassette, and the company went belly up 20 years ago, should you still be able and allowed to play your media?
It's my problem. It's not a problem of companies. I think so. Because if I have some records in my house, I am obliged to have the technical means to reproduce it. Or
even if you're breaking the law by circumventing DRM.
Who and how will discover I broke the law? How?
True. That's true. Okay. Well, I'm sorry to say that this is unfortunately coming to an end, that we just out of time. I would love to keep talking about this for hours and hours. I didn't even touch software patents, so sorry for that. But hopefully we'll get an opportunity to talk about this more. And I've really enjoyed this, and thank you, wonderful panelists.